Hi guys, number one Marmaduke fan here. We're looking at the True Believers release for the Punisher World Journal number one. This isn't the regular Punisher series. This was a spin-off from 1988. I don't really, I guess for some of the spin-offs, like for Spider-Man, there'd be like a theme to it, like Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man would sort of focus on Peter Parker's life more than the Spider-Man side of things. So I don't really get what the difference between the Punisher and the Punisher War Journal is. I was not a Punisher fan as a kid. I didn't like that he killed people. I thought he was kind of dark for like the fun Spider-Man kind of comics I used to read as a kid. But one of the nice things maybe about thinking about comics this past year is as I've been like reintroducing myself to old comics, I've been looking at characters I used to not look at or not care about because they just weren't my jam as a kid, which means I'm getting to kind of come at them with fresh eyes as an adult and really appreciate some gems from across the years. So this one was written by Carl Potts and Carl Potts also did the layouts, meaning like the quick little breakdown sketches, like loose pencil sketches. And Jim Lee did the finished art, meaning he inked everything and he added detail to everything. I really enjoyed this book. I've read stories like this with superheroes. It's like Batman going to visit Crime Alley to remember the day his parents died. It's kind of that type of a story for Punisher. But this kind of reminded me of Watchmen in that it came from a similar decade as Watchmen, and it was sort of like they weren't just ripping off Watchmen, but they were doing a similar type of thing of Watchmen, of using like imagery in a very interesting way. It's sort of like they figured out, hey, we can use the art to add all this subtext to stuff and have like images like the skull, be a recurring thing. It was just a fun kind of creative, let's test the boundaries time for the art. And this was a very young Jim Lee. They've actually got an illustration of him at the back. Very young Jim Lee, but so scrappy, so detailed. So it's just such fun art. It really holds up well. So the basic setup is I kind of like figured it out within the first two pages. Is Punisher is making some plans and he's about to go like take a trip, and on every page there's a single panel at the bottom which is different than every other panel. It has a much thicker black outline, it's drawn in a different style, and it's colored in a different style, meaning almost instantly I can tell this is something different and these two panels relate to one another. And so what it obviously is if you know anything about the Punisher, his family was killed because he accidentally witnessed a mob hit. The bullet kind of grazed off of him, but both of his kids and his wife were killed, and this drives him nuts. He had everything, he lost it, now he's the Punisher. And I even like how in this very first page, we see that, and then he pauses for a bit as he's thinking about it, and there's even a color tie-in between the two, and then he makes fun of his friend, and then things are normal after that. So after that, this is the only moment with like a pregnant pause to think about this. After that, it just starts moving at a nice little pace, and you get into the adventure story. And this whole separate story slowly unfolds underneath, and the colors are used symbolically. So yellows and greens are calm colors, oranges and reds are tense colors, so it builds to the oranges and reds and then comes back down to the yellows and greens as it gets calmer again. And it's just beautiful how everything ties together. While that is the key distinction I see in style is like really clean thick lines around the bottom panels and sort of detailed like more shading along the top panels. He uncovers like this, like he just kind of like walks by a family who seem to be getting harassed by some crooks, and he thinks, well, I'm going to be late, and then he decides, I better look into it. So I want to call attention to this because one thing that Jim Lee is really good at is dynamic shots and action and putting weight into things. And they actually mentioned that he was a wrestler in college. Like, look at that. It's the good old Marvel style of picking the most exciting moment, not just like the at the start of the punch, and not just like the relaxing after the punch, but the most intense moment throughout the action and showing the whole action. So he beats up the bad guys to help out the crew, and there's this whole little story that's interspersed into it. So this guy Montoya is in jail. I don't know who this is, but it's this really sweet thing where he's in jail, he thinks about his family, he doesn't want to ruin it and lose his parole, so he kind of focuses on his family to get him through like the other prisoners harassing him. So it was a really sweet, intense moment of him just like staring at the picture. Oh, why did I paperclip that? I guess on a later page. But this one of him like staring at the picture, really intense, and just ignoring the guys, and then he just barely gets out of it. So what this shows is that in the midst of this story, which is really cool, they're also setting up the next issue, which is great. This is what gets you invested in the next thing. I really love this kick where kind of Frank tricks them into thinking he went to one side of the house and then he went to the other side of the house, and it shows the whole motion up there, and it's such a straight leg. It's like the moment of impact and the recoil from it. Great stuff. Frank Castle beats up the bad guys, and then the interesting thing they start doing is you start seeing the kite starts having a really noticeable black shape on it, and that kind of morphs and becomes more and more skull-like, and you realize that the kite that from his children who died, that's the moment he became the Punisher. Visually, the shadow on the kite itself begins to reflect the Punisher, and everything comes together at the end. He goes to kind of like remember his family and eat a sandwich and fly a kite, everything tied in. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. Because great comics used to be like a good old education in classic Western literature too. And then they do a whole setup. I love this page. They just show like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 panels of things you can expect in Punisher War Journal. And they do such a good job of just getting you excited to go sign up for Punisher the War Journal and read all of it. They are selling you on the next issue in every issue. Dinosaurs, the Kingpin, kids, twins setting fire to their school, opium, soldiers murdering Indians, a wheelchair, an evil guy with a mask, a hammerhead shark gonna eat it. This was such a great era for comics. Okay, Punishing Profiles. I love this. Some great little kind of behind-the-scenes info, kind of making fun of their staff. Don DeLay here. We've got a rabidly dedicated squad creating the Punisher War Journal, which makes editing the book a pleasure. I personally like, and hope you do too, Carl Potts' composition, Jim Lee's mania for detail, Jim Novak's unobtrusively crisp lettering, and John Wellington's sensitive yet sensible palette. I'm tickled, R2, comic book code for pink, to be dealing with the Punisher, a man whose methods and motives lie squarely within the penumbra of controversy. I hope you stay with us. So Carl Potts, they kind of make fun of him for having spelling errors. He likes the smell of paintballs in the morning. We had no idea how to fill this space. Mr. Potts likes the smell of paintballs in the morning. He also nourishes a fondness for egg-laying tooth carps from South America. And I like that just kind of like lyrical, simple little drawing. They're getting you pumped on the creative team. Jim Lee. Archie Goodwin introduced Jim to Carl 18 months ago. Within 10 minutes, Editor Potts gave Jim an Alpha Flight story to draw. The rest, as they say, is history. Today, Mr. Lee, no relation to Stan Lee, is one of the comic field's fastest rising stars. And if those body slams and the fight scenes look real, chalk it up to Jim's college career as a wrestling star. The fight scenes matter because this is an action-based genre. And it's interesting when you have knowledge of the martial arts to relate to a comic that focuses on the martial arts. And then they do all the fun stuff like editor extraordinaire, letterist beyond compare, editor of the whole affair. They had so much fun. It's fun even just reading these because you can tell how much fun they had. They're just having a good old blast. I don't even like The Punisher, and I love this comic. 1988. It's available digitally. Good on Marvel. I've only seen like a couple True Believers books where it wasn't available digitally right away, but you can get this digitally. I even got like a bunch of Punisher War Journal comics last year, cheap, and kind of old-ish, maybe like from the early 90s. So it's not that hard to pick these up if you've got a comic book store with a good back collection. So the Punisher War Journal, it's a blast. And Jim Lee, of course, was a big selling point of this. That's it. Let's do this before it's 10 minutes. I'm #1 Marmaduke fan. I love you guys. Like, comment, subscribe, click the bell to receive notifications. Check out my Subscribestar, link in the description. Thank you to my Super Chat donators and my Subscribestar people. I appreciate all your feedback and comments. I'm #1 Marmaduke fan. I love you guys. And I'm actually going to end this video before it's 10 minutes. Take that, YouTube algorithm. Catch you later.